The Obama-McCain presidential election was the first presidential election I followed with any amount of interest, mainly because my roommates were really interested in it, and so that was always on TV, and we were always, we were watching The Daily Show a lot. That's where we got our news, and we followed it, and we tracked it, and they didn't want to admit it, but they were getting kind of bought in and sold into these different presidential candidates, and so I was watching a lot, and it was a really interesting time to be watching politics as a senior in college, and it was very cool. Barack Obama was young, cool, he was likable, he knew how to use Twitter. It was like no one had ever seen that in presidential politics before. Like no president before Obama even had a phone. Like they just take it from him, and they existed without a phone. Like they just didn't use the phone ever. It was gone. And the guy he was running against was a good candidate, but he was kind of old. He was a war hero, but he got injuries in war, so he couldn't really lift his arms. He looked old. He looked old and crotchety. That's what he looked like. Okay, he didn't look very likable. And I don't care what the history books tell you. That was a massive part of that presidential election. Okay, it was there. I was in college. I know what we were all thinking. And what was going on was this snapshot of Obama between McCain was the snapshot that convinced Democrats that they were going to run America for 1,000 years. They're like, look, we're young and hip and state of the art, and our guy practices with the UNC basketball team. It's cool. And then there's this guy over here, and there's this debate going on. There's a guy we kind of like. He's likable. He's cool, he's young, and there's this other guy who is at least making an argument that he's a better candidate for president than the other guy, and we have to vote on these people. And then do you remember what happened? The stock market crashed. And both candidates put their campaign on hold, and they went back to Capitol Hill to discuss with the Senate what we should do, because they were both in the Senate at the time, remember? And the great big discussion going on in 2008 was, should we pass this giant stimulus bill to save our economy? You remember? And they both voted yes. Now, I didn't know a whole lot about politics. Now I'm like the guru. You just come to me and you say, Garrett, just tell me who to vote for, and I tell you, and you're all happy about it, because I'm the genius in the room about politics now. But back then, I didn't know a whole lot. I didn't know a whole lot about it. But I watched that, and I knew enough even then to say McCain just lost the president. There's no way he's winning now. Because the question was, do we vote for the guy we all can just admit out loud we kind of like him better, or do we vote for the guy who is at least arguing that he's going to be a better president? Now, they're both arguing they're going to be a better president, but that was a toss-up, right? And then we got to see in real time what they would give us if they were president. And the answer was the exact same thing. And so everybody was like, why don't we just vote for the guy we like? Because they're going to be kind of the same once they're in office. Now, you can all breathe now. We're not going to talk about politics anymore, because I know some of you are happy about how that race went down. Some of you are having, nightmares right now. So we're going to breathe. We're going to move on. Now, this is not a perfect analogy for how the church lives in its culture, but it is helpful to an extent. Because as we live in the church and as we follow Jesus, there's a certain there's a way that he lays out for us. There's a worldview that he hands down to us. There's a thing that we must follow. If we're going to be with Jesus, then we've got to follow him. And sometimes that doesn't go perfectly in line with what our culture does it? Sometimes as Christians, we find ourselves at a crossroads with the culture. We find ourselves off kilter. We're not lining up perfectly. And the question always comes up, well, what do we do then? What do we do in those moments? Do we just kind of go along to get along and maybe we'll become more attractive that way? Or do we hold tight? Do we stick to it? And thankfully, Jesus actually told us how to handle this situation. And here's the thought that I want you to kind of log in your mind. And if you're a Christian today, I want you to hold on to this. If you're not a Christian today, I want you to use today as an example for at least an explanation for why those Christians will just not get in line with the rest of us, right? So you can at least act like you're, Jane Goodall among the monkeys, all right? You're just a scientist today, okay? Like, explore us Christians today. Here's the thought that's going to be kind of the banner for the whole day. You ready? It's this: the things God calls us to is what God made us for. That Jesus did not just hand us a bunch of rules just because, but rather that God made humanity a certain way, and when He calls us to things, it's because He's made us for those things. In some cultures, some things God calls us to, our culture will look at and go, wow, that's pretty great. I kind of like that you do that. That's kind of cool. Actually, I can really be in favor of that. And some things they just go, oh, why do you always have to, why? Why do you got to be that way? And sometimes, if you're going to follow Jesus, you're going to find yourself at odds with the culture you belong to. And I could be preaching this exact same sermon in any continent on earth because it would be true anywhere you'd plot me down. Now, maybe we're talking about different cultural situations. Maybe we're talking about different things where the culture agrees or disagrees, but it's still true. You're going to find yourself at odds with the world. And here's a super important theme that the Bible lays out for us, and the New Testament quotes a lot. And it's from Psalm 118. It says this: the stone the builders rejected became the cornerstone. So the idea is that these builders are going to build a house, right? And so back in the day, they didn't lay a foundation of concrete like we do today because they weren't as smart as us. No, I'm just joking. But right, they didn't do a big foundation like we do today. And actually, that's the Savannah talk. And here, you don't even do that. Y'all just do crawl spaces here. So I don't even, whatever. The illustrations, whatever. Okay, but they go and find a stone. It's going to be the cornerstone, the biggest, most important, most foundational piece of the entire house. And the entire house would be built on and from that cornerstone. And these builders would come up to this rock and go, nah, we don't like this rock. This rock's no good. Let's get rid of it. Let's throw it out of town and let's find a different rock. And then God comes along and says, no. That stone over there that you thought was useless is actually the cornerstone. It's the key piece of everything. And as Christians, our lives are built on top of that stone. Our lives are built around and revolve around that stone, Jesus Christ. He is the center of it all. But sometimes His rejection is going to become our rejection. And that's pretty tough, isn't it? It's hard to deal with. What would Jesus tell us to do? What He would say is, hold the line. Don't give up. In John's chapters 14 through 17, Jesus goes on this really long talk. He's talking with His disciples. It's called the farewell discourse. He knows He's about to die. It's His last night with His friends, His closest disciples, and He's preparing them for a time when He won't be with them all the time. And so He's like, listen, here's what you're going to know. You're going to need to know these things so you can be ready. And here's one of the things He says here. You ready? He says this: if the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. And if you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. But as it is, you do not belong to the world. But I have chosen you out of the world. Okay. And then He goes on, He tells them a lot more hard things to say. And He tells them a lot more things. In chapter 16, He says this. He says, the reason I'm telling you this, I tell you this, so that you may have peace. Because in this world you will have trouble. But take heart. I have overcome the world. In this world, you're going to find trouble. In this world, you will experience some rejection or being brushed aside because you're just one of those silly Christians or whatever. You will experience these things. But take heart. Take heart. Because everything you're experiencing is perfectly predictable. Because if you did belong to the world, you could go along with the world. You could just go along with what they're doing, and everything would be fine. But as it is, you don't belong to the world. You belong to the cornerstone that the world casts aside. And so in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, we go, well, what do we do in those moments? I remember when I was a youth pastor, I had a 13-year-old girl come up to me, and she's one of my favorite people in the youth group. She didn't have any friends, but that kind of made her cool. Rachel comes up to me and she goes, hey, ever since I've been coming to this church, I'm the only one in my friend group whose mom cares what movies we watch. And it makes it really weird and awkward on sleepovers when I'm the only one in the room having to raise my hand going, sorry, I have rules, I can't do that. And I just smiled. I go, of course she cares now. Of course she does. Because she is now living into what Jesus is wanting from her. Right? But it gets hard in those moments. Have you ever wondered why Jesus has to say, take heart? Have you ever wondered why the Bible has to say so often, don't be afraid, fear not, don't worry? You know why it has to say this so often? Because the Christian life was never actually meant for the faint of heart. It's meant for people who are willing to stand up and pick up their cross and follow Jesus. And say, okay, if Jesus is going that way, I'm going that way. And sometimes it gets you in some hairy situations. I remember John Weiss once. Is it already 11? Oh my gosh, okay. 1, 2, skip a few. Don't worry about the John Weiss story, it's not important. Here's what you can expect. You can expect moments where you disagree with the world. And those moments will leave you going, did I make the right choice? Should I have just done what everybody else does? And the Bible wants you to know those moments are predictable. They're going to happen. Here's what the Apostle Paul says. Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Meaning, there are going to be times when what the Bible says resonates with our culture. I like that. That sounds cool. That sounds great. Go for it. Okay, that's one thing I can agree with Christians. And then he says, out of season. There's going to be some things the Bible teaches that your culture's not going to like. And they're not going to get it. They're not going to appreciate it. They're just going to think you're a jerk. But in both of those seasons, we're going to use God's word. We're going to use the Bible. We're going to use Jesus Christ as our anchor. It's to correct and rebuke and encourage. But we will do this with great patience and careful instruction. Because it's sometimes kind of hard to hear what the Bible has to say, isn't it? Sometimes you have to understand there's some resistance coming back at you. You go, okay, I understand. Let's talk about it. Let's talk it through. We're going to be patient. For a time will come when people will no longer put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers who will say what their itching ears want to hear. Now, it's that last line right there that I want us to think about. Because that last line, they will gather around themselves a great number of teachers for whatever their itching ears want to hear. That's the sort of mode of living and moving that all of us before we were Christians, we did. We were all right there, right? We've all been there. And someday, the way people become Christians is one day they wake up to the fact that they go, wow, what have I been doing? I've been making a wreck of my life. I've been making giant mistakes because I've just been going along to get along, and it has been leading me astray. My best guesses, my blind guesses of how to live my life have not been working for me. And so people wake up to that, and they come to the church, and they go, as they so often do, and they sit down, and they go, well, let me see what these people have to say, because the world's not helping me. Let me give these guys a chance. And when they show up here, hear me when I say this, we had better not be on record of having said, well, if it feels good, do it. you got to be true to yourself. If it makes you happy, go for it. We had better not be on record having this place where we cut corners or this place where we just agreed and went along to go along, because those things are hurting people. And we're going, no, yes, we stood there and we let them be mad at us. We let them go, why do you got to be that way? And we just stood there and we waited till they come back. And we go, glad to have you. Do you want to hear about Jesus? And we can sit them down and they can open their Bibles and they can learn about how Jesus would live his life and how we can live after him. Because here's what we believe. Christians do not believe that God calls us just to a set of rules. We believe that God has called us to a good, holy, and healthy way of life. We believe that God has made humans to live within a framework that involves many things like relationships, community, generosity, love, faith, hope, order, justice, meaning, and many other things. And they all tie together. They all go together into the Christian worldview, into what Jesus is calling us to. And if we're going to be the city on a hill that he says we are, we need to take heart and hang tight and be a witness to the fact that what Jesus calls us to are the things that he made us for. And if it puts us at odds with the culture, take heart, because Jesus is saving that culture. He's saving the people in that culture. And one day, little by little, we want him to send those people to us so that we can be an evangelistic engine for what Jesus is trying to do in this world. So take heart. I want to show you something to help you understand yourself and help me to understand myself, and then ultimately help us understand how our culture can end up getting sideways with God. Are you ready? There's two theologies that go hand in hand in the Bible, two doctrines that you need to know about. And the first one is called the image of God. Write some letters, divide by the greatest common denominator, and that's what I have up there. All right. So the image of God says this, that we were created in God's image. God, in the very beginning of the Bible, said, let us make man in our own image. And let's create him like he can be kind of like us. And he's like us in a way that nothing else in the world would be like us. And God's a creative God, we're creative people. God's a loving God, we're loving people. God's a working God, we're working people. We can do things because of the image of God in us. And because of the image of God, humans have relationships that go in three directions. Okay? The first one is obviously up. Our first and most important relationship is with God. What did Wes say? The purpose of humans is to worship God. The Westminster Confession says, what's the chief end of man? To glorify God and to enjoy him forever. This upwards relationship is super important. It is so valuable to us. But he also created us to have sideways relationships with each other, where we can bear one another's burdens, where we can care for each other, we can love and be kind and have friendship and have community. And he's created us with a relationship to the things that are beneath us. Let us make them in our image so they can rule over the planet. He can take care of the garden. He can work it and keep it and make it better. We work with the things that are below us and we make it better. And then it can be a benefit to the world around us and to the glory of God. That's what he's made in us. When he gave us the image of God, he gave us the ability to work with the world around us, to interact with the world in a way that the world gets better. And we see this in 1,000 different ways. Okay? You can take dirt and some seeds and just a plot of land, and you can work it and take care of it, and you get a garden. You can take flour, water, yeast, and salt, and you work it, and you do this, and you make it better. You combine them, you put them together, and you can make bread, and you can do this. And you can do that with songs. You can organize noise in such a way where it makes music for us, and you can organize the storyline of just things that happen around, and you can turn them into a history book. You can do all sorts of things. You can work with the things that belong to you to make things better. And hopefully, you'll make them better to where they're a benefit to the people around you, and they glorify God. That's the hope. And as people get together and they share ideas, and you do your stuff and I do my stuff and she does her stuff and all that sort of thing, and we get together and we borrow ideas from each other and we learn from each other, and you have enough people doing things a certain way, you have what we call a culture. This culture here, they make bread this way. That culture there, they make bread that way. In India, they make naan. Have you ever been to an Indian restaurant? You're not skipping on the naan. No diets at the Indian restaurant, okay? We're eating carbs at Indian night, okay? I don't care about the rest of the food. We're eating the naan, okay? We like it. But that's because different cultures have found different ways to work with the same materials, create different things. It's pretty cool. Start with sand, end with an iPhone. It's pretty cool. God created. It happened, okay? We have iPhones for a reason, okay? You think we made it out of trees? Kinda, yeah, we made them out of trees. All right, because we had the ability to start with nature and make technology. It's pretty cool. And the hope is that you and I in our culture will work with what belongs to us to the benefit of others and to the glory of God. That's the image of God in you. And whenever you see something in a culture or happening out in pop culture or some music that just inspires you or a movie that makes you want to be a better man or whatever, that is the image of God bleeding through in that story. And we as a church can celebrate it. We don't need to make everything a fight. We can celebrate it. But we don't get to just, this does not just go on its own, by the way. There's another theology that goes hand in hand with the image of God, and that is the fall of man. The fall. The idea that sin came into the world and broke everything. That Adam and Eve, when they did that first sin, they opened the door to sin, and then sin flooded the world. And it wound its way into every nook and cranny of this place. It wound our way into our hearts, into our culture, into our souls, into our motivations. It found its way into everything. And when we say that sin found its way into everything, which of these relationships did sin break? Every single one. What about our relationship to God? Do we want to glorify God and put Him on the throne of our heart? Is that the normal thing that people want to do? No. I want to be the throne of my heart. I want to be the God of my life. I want to be the final arbiter of truth. What about our relationship to each other? Sin broke that too. Where we're more like, most often, unless we've been trained out of it, we're most often concerned about what about me? What do I get out of it? What's my benefit? I'll stab you in the back so that I can succeed. I'll climb over you. I'll do it right. Our relationships have gotten hurt. And our relationship to the things that belong to us. No longer is our job just a thing where we can make the world a better place to the benefit of others and glorify God, but rather it's just a way for me to make a name for myself. I can make more money if I do it this way, or I can do that. And all these things get affected by sin. And even though the image of God is still there and it's still working in our lives, that we have been tainted by sin, and it's hurting our ability to do what God calls us to. And if it hurts your ability and my ability to do what God's calling us to, then it will also affect the culture we belong to. And so here's what's cool. Because this is how culture kind of works and it happens, it means, one, the culture is this thing we're kind of swimming in and we kind of belong to it. It makes sense to us. But it's also something that's not like in charge of us. That we have been given the image of God. We've been given the ability to think about our culture. What does our culture do well? What does it get right? What are places where we should speak into our culture and go, maybe we should do it a different way, or maybe we should stop that altogether. And how are different ways that we can speak into and interact with our culture? And traditionally, there have been basically three different ways that Christians have found ways to interact with the culture. This is from Reinhold Niebuhr, and he says this. First one is Christianity in opposition with the culture. Everything's a fight. We're just going to fight everything tooth and nail. Everything's going to be a fight. The second one is Christianity collapsing into the culture. We're no different than you. Hey, we're just kind of the same. Oh, look, we all get along? Hey, we all believe the same things. We're okay. And the church kind of disappears. But the third one, and the one I hope that we will follow, is Christianity as a transformer of culture. That as we are a church, we are kind of an outpost of the kingdom of God existing in Louisville, living under the reign of Jesus. And as people come in, they get a glimpse of what Jesus has been calling them to all along. And they can join in and go, I want more of that. And little by little, hopefully, God willing, our culture will become more like Jesus. After the Soviet Union basically outlawed Christianity, got rid of everything Christian, everything you could think of. It just stripped it of all of it. And then after the Soviet Union fell, Philip Yancey was a journalist, and he went out to Russia to look at it. And when he was there, he started looking around, and he started realizing every painting he saw, every song he heard, every piece of art, every poet, everyone he could find was doing something having to do with Jesus. And he goes, how is this possible? I thought you got rid of. And he's just asked some guy in Russia. He said, how's it even possible? How's this going? He goes, they got rid of the churches. They got rid of our Christianity. They got rid of our freedom of religion. They got rid of it all. But they forgot to get rid of two things. Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. Two authors who will go down as some of the greats in history, whose works are so bathed and drenched in the gospel of Jesus Christ that even though they got rid of everything else, this art made its way into the culture, and it affected the culture. Now, what do? You don't have to be a preacher. You can be a pharmacist. You can be a teacher. You can be a person in your neighborhood. You can be a coach at Little League. You can do 1,000 different things and say, I'm going to do this the way Jesus has made me and called me to do this. And I'm going to do it to make this better, to the benefit of others, and to the glory of God. And I'm going to trust that God's going to use my life to help transform my culture and the world around me. That is the call that Jesus has on the church. And it's a pretty cool one, if you ask me. It's pretty cool that God would think that way about your life. And my hope, my prayer, is that when things get tough, when things get hard, you will take heart and you'll hang tough with Jesus. Because what he's calling you to is what he has made you for. And don't you ever forget that.